My next guest has Veronica Lange. She is from the UBS, big bank, who really has to think about blockchain. She is head of innovation and UBS chief at the UBS Chief Technology Office. And of course, we're very interested in hearing now what thoughts does a big bank has when it comes to blockchain, when it comes to this new technology, who could perhaps make banks out of work. So, Veronica Lange, an applause for you, and we're very interested in your speech.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, thank you. I hope my presentation is up here. Yes. Thank you very much for having me. And of course, you will still need banks. I mean, I probably wouldn't work at one if I wouldn't believe in that. But certainly, it's a very exciting time if you work in technology and around innovation and you're in the banking sector these days. And I would like to take you a bit through what we see as trends and activities around what we call the future of finance and opportunities therein for banks and people that work in the financial services industry. It has been mentioned quite a few times already today that there has been this hype over the last couple of years in fintech investments. 2016 has seen a little bit of a cooling down of VC investments into the fintech sector, and probably that's a good thing because there had been quite a lot of enthusiasm and fantasy about some of the potentials, and we've also seen that on blockchain, which I'll come to in a bit more later as well, because people thought there's a great new technology, it's ready as the internet, and we can do something tomorrow. And that's clearly not the case. It's something very nascent that we're still working on. However, the storm of new technologies and options for innovation is creating a lot of impact on our industry. And the World Economic Forum has summarized that quite well with 5 statements on the right side, and where we will see a further unbundling of services where you don't just get all of your financial products from one bank, where the role of banks also to raise capital is being substituted, for example, by the crowd or by other providers, where we don't necessarily have to be super big to be competitive. So scale is not necessarily the only advantage that you can have, and that was much different in the decades previous to now. And we will have different forms of thinking and measuring risks. So all in all, there's so much going on that we'll be continuously innovating along. And at UBS, we are kind of focusing on these nine technology areas because all of them really enable new business models. And that's crucial to understand because it's not just about replacing the whole infrastructure and the applications that we run today by something else and have a bit of a more efficient IT in the background. It's about these technology really disrupting the way how banking is being done. And it's also raising the expectations with clients. So we have to rethink to some extent and in certain areas how we can provide better services and how we remain relevant and at the forefront of this. And that goes along all of those layers, right, where we have a strong changes with artificial intelligence, and it's been mentioned before, about impacts on the workforce, but also about the impact in terms of how we can actually make use of data and find more intelligent solutions. It's those enablers around cloud and marketplaces connecting and scaling through APIs, which is application protocol interfaces, so you can connect systems and institutions more cleverly, and the whole change on the customer experience, which is massive in terms of numbers, but it's also underpinned by the blockchain. So we have to rethink how we provide client services and what our products are, and which utilities we need as an industry. And we recently published, together with Credit Suisse, a report for the Swiss Finance Council, and this is one of the graphics in there, just to classify a little bit about what this does, because of course, there's all the Ubers and the front-end type robo-advisory offerings that are taking place, or new peer-to-peer payment offerings taking part. But this is not the only space where we see changes and new entrants coming into the financial services industry. This is really along the whole value chain. So banks have to respond and have to also look at the whole process up to the front office, where there's aggregators that are just trying to come between us with the front end, where there's displacers that try to excel on a certain component of the value chain, and where there's replacers who want to do just another next generation bank, fully digital. And all of those are coming at the same time. So for us as a global bank, it's quite a challenge to be on top of all of these technologies, and we have to look at new models of security, the balance against convenience. Everybody wants it very, very inconvenient, but the moment something goes wrong, we have to be very careful because we're standing up against it. So we try to have really top-notch but very safe solution, and I think Switzerland has some of the highest standards here, and we try to do so as well. It's about overhauling and getting rid of a lot of legacy IT and implementing new service infrastructure. But it's also about getting the right people. Banks are characterized by quite a risk-averse population, and that was quite rightly so, because we're managing money, and that's very important to our clients. However, for some of these initiatives and for innovation, you need people that are entrepreneurial thinking, that think out of the box, and that apply to some extent also a different viewpoint to how you can make solutions. So we're out there, and if you think about how much you can earn today as a data scientist, it's probably the best career choice you can make when you get out of school today, because those people are very sought of, and we're competing here not only with tech companies, but basically with all of the industries. And it's the complexity and the culture change that we need to tackle to be innovative. How do we do that? For us, it's very clear that to be innovative, collaboration really is at the core of our innovation strategy. We have collaboration at the management level with a monthly innovation board, where we have a separate investment fund to kickstart new ideas and seed fund innovative projects. We work in open ecosystems, like in our lab in Level 39, but also with the Kickstart Accelerator here in Switzerland and the Digital Switzerland Initiative, to nurture the environment, to have hopefully many good and clever startups be in our geographies, and to help us and to be a partner for better developments. We also have more strategic partnerships. Now, the merger of payment with Twint is one of those examples where we're trying to team up together for a solid solution that is available for mobile payments in the Swiss market. But also on other topics like digital identity or regulatory issues, we can't just do it alone, and sitting in isolation and not talking with anyone is not an option. So it's really about engaging and being proactive. And I'm very pleased that we have these days a very open and very regular contact with the main regulators, but also with the universities and other partners about where the industry is going. And last but not least, it's also about taking our employees along, and to make sure that it's not an exercise of that wild bunch out there in the separate lab, but that it's something where we're taking along the entire organization, and we're training and upskilling everyone to innovate. So there's a whole innovation process that we've established with a lot of scouting of good ideas, then applying our venture funding to accelerate ideas and to execute it into the market. One of the more relevant programs, and I won't spend too much time on it because Jutta has already covered quite a few technicalities around blockchain, but it's our Crypto 2.0 Pathfinder program and the lab in London that works around it. And we've initiated that 2 years ago because we started to become interested about the technology behind Bitcoin. And if you abstract that from the Bitcoin network, and as it was said before, it's been really exciting to see where originally everybody was just talking about Bitcoin value being on the blockchain. Essentially, that moved on to store other assets on the blockchain. So you can have gold, you can have real estate, you can have even rights, you can have all kinds of tangible and intangible assets being represented with a value on the blockchain. And that then enables you to engage in peer-to-peer transactions because everybody's trusted that participates in the network, because they've all been accessing that network and have a single identity. You can have that direct exchange and trade of those assets. And it poses immediately the question then about intermediation and the role of the banks if parties can exchange assets directly with each other, and what we can still do and how you govern that, and how you want to regulate it. And as it was said before, there's quite a few open questions there still. But the development of smart contracts has helped to almost like create the ability to create products or offerings that you can almost take like a vanilla template and then use on the blockchain to provide products and services. And that means that the creation of financial services and financial products becomes much more templated, much easier, much more standardized. And you don't necessarily need that scale and need hundreds and thousands of people that work in a banking organization to provide such services, because you have a trusted network that gives you access to clients that just download an app on their phone or on their computer. And it has mechanisms that ensures that a franc or a dollar or a euro that is represented on the system cannot be spent twice. And that's really the big benefit of the distributed ledger, the technology below it, that you have that network, that it's public, but it's not publicly visible. So everybody's using pseudonyms. You have a certain degree of anonymity, which is also, to a degree, the question that is always raised about the maybe fraudulent or criminal use of such networks. But in essence, I have a cryptographic key that I receive when I register. Now, that also poses some problems, because if you get a key, a private key that is your identifier on the system, and you lose that key, you lose all your money. And people that might have, in some sort of enthusiastic moment 5 years ago, bought some bitcoins and threw the piece of paper where they noted the key, they're pretty sorry today because of the price that has come up. So what we as a bank obviously are interested in, because we believe in the fundamental principles of trust, security, and access that really make this such a powerful technology. But there's some really key areas that we need to standardize and get installed so that it works. And we like to refer to them as those 4 pipes that make up the market fabric for a blockchain-enabled blockchain-enabled infrastructure, so to say. And one thing is that, starting from the right, that you need to have a place where you register your trades. That's basically your timeline of all the trades happening. You also want to have a register of your securities, your product, your smart contracts, where you basically have your code registered and on the blockchain safely stored. And then you need standardized or agreed forms of digital identity, because only when people have a secure identification to take part in the network, then you have a very efficient way of really using that in the digital economy. And there's quite a few countries that are now taking an active go at creating digital identities for the population. We see that in Australia, we see that in Canada. Estonia has been probably the front runner for a number of years in creating a digital identity and have that used for anything. You can even get married today in Estonia with a digital identity, or you can create, even as a foreigner, your business there and then start engaging and do everything basically in a digital way and sign. Here in Switzerland, we're also looking into that. I'll come to that in a minute. But this is important, and it also refers back to the inclusion aspect that we've heard of earlier this morning. Because if you have digital identities, suddenly you have a very cheap mechanism of really getting lots and lots of people, especially underserved financial population, access to the system. So countries like India are really very active and have rolled out digital identities now to their countries, and others are following that route. And then last but not least, you need a way to transfer value, because one of the biggest downsides that we see with the blockchain tests and trials today is that you might be able to real-time transfer an asset on the blockchain, but that doesn't mean that the money moves at the same time. You still afterwards have settlement. And it's the settlement that we really like to get rid of, because that's what we're all doing double. That whole alignment of who spent what and not spending a dollar double, that's what's created a massive infrastructure in the market. So by getting an agreed form of value on the blockchain, the moment that you transfer an asset from one person to another, maybe even without the direct involvement of a bank, that's when you can also settle the money at the same time. So our proposal on that is that we've come up with the concept of a utility settlement coin together with a startup, a small company called Climatics, and together with a number of other banks, amongst them Deutsche Bank and BNY Mellon. We are exploring the utility settlement coin. And that will be a representation of fiat money, of true money on the blockchain, of francs, of dollars, of euros, so that we'd get an agreed and legal form of money on the blockchain. And this is now in a proof of concept stage and has been discussed in numerous engagements with regulators and central banks. So we're hoping that we're on a journey where we will get, in a foreseeable future, to find an agreed way and a structured form of representing real money on the blockchain as well. But aside blockchain, what is really changing with the digitalization, and where is the bank's role then in this world of P2P, of direct access, of mobility, where everybody can do everything very fastly? We think that as a bank we have needs to fulfill to our clients, and they are around providing better wealth assistance, providing also services in the areas of security and privacy, to help them in the world of open finance, and to think beyond banking, beyond simple money offerings when it comes to their wealth. Because at the end of the day, we are trusted institutions, and for many years. And we know a lot about our clients. So we have a good starting point to really be meaningful in their lives going forward. A few examples. On wealth assistance, and normally I have it's not working here today. I have a little video that runs on the back with all the research that we produce in a couple of days. And it goes on for about 3 minutes. It's very long. The amount of research, the amount of investment advice is not digestible today. So a bank is very much needed to filter, to consolidate, and to be providing you with the relevant offerings and recommendations for sales. And for investments. So this is where we think we can be helping in the navigation. UBS Smart Wealth, our recent digital offering that we've launched in the UK, is a complete digital format of doing wealth management for clients. And of course, this is like robo-advisories in the US or in other markets. This is a cheaper, more direct, and more accessible way to provide wealth management advice. So this is also democratizing in a sense of being open to people with less money to invest, and opening up for new segments. But it's about that provisioning of information at the right time and in the right context to clients. And in that context, we're also experimenting with new channels like Amazon Alexa. You see here, and probably some of you have used it or have it at home. I've heard 4% of the US households have an Alexa already at home. So it's, despite some of the security concerns of running it permanently in your living room, it does constitute a new channel that people want to use and will use. But it means that you have to rethink how you store your content and how you provide it to your clients, because suddenly it's a conversation. It's not a website. It's not a piece of paper where you can just put down information in bullet points and then maybe put some banners with the advertisings or the relevant call to actions. No, you have to rethink about how you actually provide information and how do you guide people in a conversation to giving them the right advice and then say, yes, please buy this stock, or I want to invest into this or that financial product. So we are experimenting with that, and there's a video that you can see on our website about how that could look like. But it's a combination about bank advice, but also information that is accessible on the web by Google or other searches that you can basically bring together. So a very disruptive way in how people access information also from a bank. Security and privacy, I mentioned that as well. We have a very complex world of many, many different identities that we use, many passwords we store, and there's also different degrees of profiles about how much security people want and how much they don't want. So you have to take that into consideration. But you need to have solutions for those that are very conservative, but also for those that really strive for convenience. And with the digital safe, we have already launched a product where you can store all your banking documents, your passports, or important digitized formats of information in a very safe, basically a digital version of the traditional safe in a bank. In a bank's office. But it goes beyond that, because if I had a private key, I would also want to store possibly my private key with my Bitcoin value in that safe, and I could store other forms of identities in such a safe. Open finance and aggregating and exchanging data is something that will be of much importance as well. And I think the blockchain technology is also one of those enablers, as we said before. We did one example and one proof of concept by building a smart bond on the blockchain, where you can basically have the end-to-end representation of a bond product as a smart contract running on the blockchain. And people could go and issue that with much less effort than they do now if the market fabric for the blockchain was established. So whilst the technology, the regulatory, and the monetary and legal questions are being solved, banks like us are experimenting with the various use cases, from trade finance over to paying and settlement and such products, financial products like bonds, to be ready to bring those to the market. And beyond banking is probably also an area that is of high relevance for you. And I was also glad to hear about art this morning, because at the end of the day, we have to rethink just about wealth being defined by the money I hold in my bank account. And advisory around that needs to take the holistic picture of all my investments into the equation. And the digitalization is actually driving some very interesting trends here on alternative assets. And I just want to quickly call out 4 of these. One is that we get, and we see that on the blockchain already, we get digital representations of physical assets. So of your gold bar, of your piece of art, of your diamond, there's a digital code formatting identifier for your piece of art, and that can be traded. So by having that, you don't really need to have paper certificates or the piece itself that you trade. You can simply trade the digital representation of it. And that accelerates. That means velocity, that means accessibility, and that means that you can suddenly create a global market with something, because digital information, digital code is very easy to trade. The second area is intangible assets. We see copyrights and other digital rights, like you could even think about rights to pollute or rights to own certain building rights, that they can be traded as well, because they can be put as a digital brief and be traded. Then we have cryptocurrencies, which are becoming a new value carrier. There's a part of the blockchain community and associated fintech companies that are very strong about not believing necessarily in the future value of $1 or €1, but they believe in the future value of a Bitcoin or an Ether or other cryptocurrencies. So investing in cryptocurrencies becomes more and more a question for some investors. And it goes beyond just simple currencies, but it's also token of time or happiness or wealth that are being conceptualized and could be traded. So I could trade some time of myself in the future, and maybe somebody would want to put some money on it. I don't know, probably not, but it's just an example about how the digitization actually creates new markets of new assets that are not part of our economy today, but that can create under certain circumstances, new markets. And I know I'm a bit over time, so I speed up. Fractionalized investments is the last bit, which is with the digitization where infinite small changes, small transactions are possible because you can just trade a fraction of a Bitcoin or likewise. You suddenly also fractionalize assets. So there's companies that are looking at just enable you to buy the 100th part of a piece of art or of real estate. So you don't need to be rich to access certain asset classes anymore because you can pool up. And with that, we basically also see, again, almost like a democratization of asset because you open the access to unserved segments by giving them the possibility to just get a share of an asset that you're interested in and which is likely to get a value increase for the future. Trust, access, and advice are those three key pillars that we see as value drivers for us, and they apply to those different asset classes. So looking very well in terms of what opportunities are in there and how the digitization really helps to make a market is key. We're publishing white papers on these issues as UBS. We've recently published one on digital identity and intelligent automation. We're just working on the one on the new alternative assets, the digitization of assets. So that's due to come out in May or June. So that will kind of wrap up our thinking about how we as a bank are positioned and the market is positioned to really take benefits of the possibilities that digitalization gives to creating new assets and to trading them, to running exchanges and evaluating them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just very quickly, some questions to Veronica Lange because she has to go to London this afternoon. She cannot be with us in the panel discussion. So are there now some questions? Here we have one. Because it was really an exciting inside look into what a big bank is doing and is thinking at the moment.
It's a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. What I see is that we need a huge electronic infrastructure, particularly blockchain. And my question is, who finances that infrastructure? Who owns it? Who maintains it? Who develops it?
Who gets the profit out of it?
Well, we as banks, we don't see ourselves as the one that will build that platform, right? I mean, there's the likes of IBM, and we'll hear from him right after me, that can probably talk a bit about their view on that. But clearly there's a race about the different protocols and platforms at the moment. Is it Hyperledger? Is it Ethereum? Is it Ripple? And it's good that we have that, and that there's also ongoing discussions about interoperability of those. So these companies are like the internet companies and the Cisco's 15 or 20 years ago that are basically building the rails and the technology to be used. If you look at the investments going into that sector, a lot of those investments are going into that base platform, and it's very much needed, but it's not necessarily our play. We really see ourselves as the user of that. But we like to input thinking about what we think it would be useful so that banks can use such a platform and what are our requirements. And that's the really good dialogue that we have in the various different consortia that are taking place.
Okay, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you very much.
It was very interesting, and applause for Veronica Lange. Because